Good morning, drummers. Garey Williams is back, and today I'm hoping I'll get some questions from some of those that might be tuning in to this live post. I'll actually schedule a Q&A at some point, but today I want to talk about the weak left hand, or this concept that we have a weak left or right hand. It's come up in some of the discussions, and I'll get a little bit into some open-handed drumming too. But I want to share with you first, before we go any further, something one of my students told me who was in the military. I'm a right-handed drummer, and most drummers seem to be. One of the things he says, you know, if you're right-handed, your left hand's actually stronger. I'm going, what? He goes, think about it. He said, if you're going to change a tire on a car, what hand would hold up the tire? I started thinking about, well, that'd be my left hand, because I'm really agile and connected intuitively with my right hand, more so than with my left. So you're going to do the detail work, the lug bolts, and the heavy lifting with the left. He also said, what about if you're going to hang a picture or painting on a wall? What hand would you hold up the picture? So it'd again be my left hand. In fact, I know from my experience playing gigs over the years I've been playing that whenever I would grab my hardware case, I'd always grab it with my left hand and feel like I could just yank it anywhere I wanted. But my right hand, I was like nervous about. That's like my steering hand around the drum set. You know, your dominant hand, you don't want to mess that one up. Anyways, so for me, I shared a little bit about rudiments in one of my earlier posts, and I talked about how I started practicing the 26 standard American drum rudiments and a sheet of 10 Swiss rudiments, roughly about 36 rudiments. And I was doing these every day, slow to fast to slow, for about a year and a half. It took about 45 minutes to an hour. So both hands got much better, but as with all of us, I'm still a right-handed player. So my left hand didn't really feel as connected to my mind. It could keep up. And that's what I tried to do by doing all these rudiments. Now, later in high school, I started going up to the college when I was a senior in high school and working with the concert band. And they had a guy there named Steve Smith, not the Journey drummer, a different Steve Smith. And he was from a corps background, drum corps. And so he had us doing these exercises with the left hand where you would like hold your arm still and go and just keep doing it over and over till the arm just burned. I mean, it was like nasty, like weightlifting. So his whole thing was about strength, endurance, and getting that kind of power and ability to just kind of power through the pain until eventually your arm started to handle it. So that to me is what I call jock chop or jock chops, which is more of a muscular approach to drumming, where you're really trying to build just a lot of power, endurance, hopefully some speed and some control that's not too tense. And I say that because at this time, I used a lot of tension. I was, young, competitive, wanted to be the best drummer. And so I would do whatever it took to get more speed. I didn't care. So sometimes when I played really fast, I'd be very tight. However, I developed the ability to play quick, but I was tense. In other words, tension was required to play fast. So some other things started happening. When I was a sophomore and I got into the first jazz band, I told you a little story about the director wanting me to hold the stick in the traditional grip fashion. Now, I played 8 years only match grip, again, did all this rudiments, did some of this really tight drum corps training stuff. And then I started relaxing the left hand. Steve Gadd was the guy I really loved, and he had this really interesting kind of technique he did with this traditional grip left hand where the stick could like bounce, and it's almost like an open and close technique. Anyway, so I was used to this idea of this sort of relaxed left hand, and again, the right hand was still the dominant hand, and I was not very good at it. But by eventually continuing to play this way, I was able to develop the traditional grip. And there's a whole lot of influences that I've had in doing this from other drummers in college that were in drum corps that shared with me some ideas on how to hold the stick. I went through all kinds of videos eventually. So I was going back and forth between the match grip, which I started with, playing the rock and roll stuff, and the traditional grip that I was introduced to. So right about this time, I was taking lessons with Mike DeRozier. I think I mentioned that in a previous video. He was the drummer for Heart. This was at the peak of Heart's success back in the day. And he just was slamming. He used this full arm stroke, a whip stroke. You've probably heard of the Moeller method or the whip stroke technique. So I was used to playing with a really kind of more of a chops approach, where I'm using more like hatcheting, like if I got a little axe and I wanted to chop a stick off of a log, versus a maul, which is where you split it. So I went from playing more like this. In fact, I was in a band before I met Mike DeRozier where all the guys in the band were like ancient, I thought. I was 18, just fresh out of high school. They were in their mid-20s. And I was not playing loud enough. And the sound man especially just rode my rear and said, you need to hit harder. It made me nervous as heck, but I ended up getting to where I would hit so hard and I was holding the stick so tight that in 2 nights I wore like a gray patch on my coated ambassador head. I mean, it was ridiculous. I'm glad I didn't do damage to my arm because I was literally kind of beating the drum. But when I started with Mike DeRozier, he had this full whipping movement. So what I learned from him, watching him and developed, was that whole whip stroke technique. I didn't know that it was really called that. But he got all this power because what he did is he transferred strength into weight. So imagine if you were standing next to me and I said, okay, I'm going to try to push you over, brace yourself. And I push, and you probably could keep me from pushing you over because first of all, I'm right next to you and I've told you. But if I move 12 feet back and I said, okay, I'm going to run at you and you try not to move, chances are you'd be moving. Now, my body weighs the same, whether I'm standing there or running, but it's the travel distance, the gravitational pull, the momentum, all that stuff creates more power without tension. So that, and then going back and forth to the traditional grip, I learned how to play. In fact, I'll link some videos to show a little bit about the whip stroke stuff from a clinic I did many years ago on a Yamaha snare drum tour clinic. But what it did is it really helped me to be able to feel like I wasn't trying to stiffen things up, as I was actually using more of an arm weight thing, which is very important when you get into doing rudiments. So to carry on this journey further, I started getting into more specific videos. I went through Murray Spivak's video. He was the teacher for Louis Bellson. Henry Adler, who was a roommate of Buddy Rich's, and when you watch his video, it looks like Buddy Rich's hands. Of course, I saw Buddy Rich live. I would watch whatever videos I could. Jim Chapin's video, Speed, Power, Endurance, Control. Not sure if that's the order you say it in. That was huge. In fact, I actually ended up taking a lesson with Jim Chapin once after I studied all his techniques to make sure I had it together. And in fact, I'll tell you a little story. My ideas about weak left hand, I was telling him how I was having problems getting more. The first thing I said is that when I play with traditional grip, my fulcrum, which is where you hold the stick, is sliding. And I was kind of, Jim Chapin, he's going to tell me the magic answer. And I said, so how do I keep it from sliding? He goes, just move it up. I'm like going, I'm making this way more complicated than it is. These are little micro adjustments you have to make in your grip to keep the balance point where you want it. But just getting this whole idea of transferring all this strength into more of a weight approach rather than a tense approach. So I think Dave Weckl said it best when he played with more of a stiff approach versus using more of a rebound approach, that his old way of playing was more like that of a boxer, and now his approach is more like a martial artist, where you're using rebound. So my basic philosophy in helping you develop left hand is to not think about it as a weak hand, but maybe a less connected or less agile hand. Because I think if you compare the hands, you might find that if you're a right-handed drummer, your right hand's probably a little faster, but you might be surprised how quick your left hand goes. Here's a little example for you. If I said just take one hand and start playing slow to fast to slow with your wrist, and do the same thing with the left hand, you probably find, well, I can get them the same speed. How about both hands together? Ooh, almost slammed there a bit. And now if you unison or go alternating, you might realize you can't go as fast. But the truth is, they actually go fast. The issue most drummers have is not really speed problems, but coordination problems. So you can try this little exercise where you put your hands together, drop out one hand, keep the other hand going, and then reverse the lead hand. You're going to find very quickly that it's really more of a coordination issue with your left hand than it actually is a strength issue. Sure, it's weak in the concept that you're not mentally as connected. Just like if you were trying to dribble a basketball with your left hand, you wouldn't probably be very skilled at it, but if you did it, you would get it. So a lot of people are looking for like the fast track. And I like to think of the hands as like children, and my voice talking to them is like the parent. And I have to spend a little more time with the left hand than I do the right hand. So certainly if there's sort of a lack of connection intuitively with your quote weak hand, you're going to want to have a relationship with it a little longer, and hopefully a positive one, and not one where you're really pissed off at it. We all go through those phases, but certainly that's going to help. So I just want to give you some concepts that you can consider when you're thinking about developing your left hand. Again, I will provide a link to a video that has some specific exercises that really go into more details. In order for me to best help anybody, I have to see what your hands look like. I have to see if the stick is being held with the arm, out the hand position. There's all these things. And for me, the big thing too is when I started lessons with Jeff Hamilton, he showed me how to get 3 bounces with 1 movement. And that just opened up my whole idea of how you could really play, because I was kind of earning most every note. So he showed me that you could incorporate more bounce and actually get things to sound better. I mean, if I hold the stick tight, it's not going to resonate very well. If I hold it loose, it's going to have a more resonant tone. It's similar to if I put my hand in front of my face and I'm talking, it's kind of a muted sound. If I move my hand away, you hear everything. So we want to try to use a grip that's relaxed. We definitely have to develop all the skills that we want to with it: speed, power, endurance, control. But there's all these things about height that really can affect the ability of playing quicker, which a lot of drummers just think that if they just play faster, they can keep the same power. And again, like a basketball, if you want more speed, you have to shorten the travel distance. These are just common things that you'll start to develop. And if you start watching other videos by other great drummers and you attend clinics, which I did for years, I was like the only guy that had a pen and a pad. I'd usually turn them into private lessons if people would stop asking questions. I just keep raising my hand because I was there to learn, and I really learned a lot from the clinics, and that really inspired me to do what I do, which is to share what I know about drumming. So the other guy I'm going to mention is Garey Williams. He's the drummer for the Steve Miller Band, and he has a very interesting concept of what he calls the open and close technique. So if you hold up your hand and you just move your hand down and up, you'll notice that as your hand moves down, your fingers extend, and you move your hand up, your fingers cup. So literally a technique where you can throw and catch the stick. I recommend you check that out. Jojo Mayer's technique is very similar, but instead of using a full wrist open and closing hand technique, he uses like a little push-pull thumb technique. I first saw that happening many years ago in the early 80s with Jeff Hamilton, and it blew me away. So my approach primarily to technique is what I refer to as bounce control, not stick control. We've all heard the famous book by George Lawrence Stone called Stick Control. I didn't personally spend much time out of that book at all. I just worked on all kinds of rudiments. And when I got exposed to the sound of loosening up my grip and getting more of a resonant tone, I started thinking about what's the best technique? Well, it's the one that sounds the best. And so you start paying attention to the sound you're getting out of your grip, and that's going to propel your technique to the next level. Your ears actually have to be ahead of your hands. So in other words, if there's something that you want to do and you can't do it, it could be more than just you have to spend more time doing it. Maybe there's something about it that you're not understanding. Like I got to see Jeff Queen, and he was the Drum Corps International Snare Drum Champion like 3 times or something. And he's got a wonderful DVD out called Playing with Sticks. I got to see him live at a Percussive Art Society International Convention. And what was amazing was when I'll never forget the scene, because he played the single stroke roll and he got it so fast. And when you looked, the sticks were just like barely above the surface, just like a really rapid fire basketball dribble. And then of course, as it got further away. So keep distance in mind. Try to use as much rebound as you can. You can check out some of the tutorial videos I have. But outside of that, it's a very personal thing. People's thumb joints are different. One time I went up to Steve Smith, a Journey drummer, at an airport going to a festival, and I said, "Can I see your thumb?" And we held up our thumbs, and he goes, "Oh, you have the jazz thumb." In other words, my thumb bends way back this way, and I can't bend it very far the other way, where I see guys like Jeff Hamilton and Jojo Mayer, and their thumb bends 90 degrees this way. So when they do that little finger push-pull technique, the thumb almost seems to be helpful in that respect. And where Steve Smith said the jazz thumb, I really don't know, but my thumb is like Steve Gadd's and Tony Williams and some of the other drummers that are more curved like this. So that's going to affect the stick position in your hand to some extent. There's just a lot of details. And if you're certainly frustrated with your left hand, like I have been, and a lot of drummers are, I can save you a lot of time. So just keep that in mind. If you're interested in private messaging me, I would love to hear from you and kind of find out what it is that you need help with. And certainly add some comments after the video. I'm going to look over here, and I'm not really seeing questions, just people that are saying hello and hoy. There is a lot of educational information that's on the site. Somebody commented recently that they saw mostly just images of drum sets. And of course, the nice thing about this drum set tribe is that we get to share our drum sets. The very unique thing about being a drummer is no two drum kits are really exactly alike. Unlike a piano or a guitar or flute or trumpet, all those instruments, they have certain dimensions, and you have to adapt your body to the spacing and how things are held and played. Drums are all over the map. I will be doing a future video on setup ergonomics, because that's really going to have a huge impact on your ability to play the instrument well if it's not really set up to fit your body. So please offer some suggestions, some other topics you want to talk about, and I'm here to help. And so keep the questions coming, keep the pictures coming. And if you check under some of the pictures in some of the thread of the conversations, you'll find there's quite a lot of helpful information that people are sharing. This is a drumming community for drum set players. Yay, not just hand drummers. So thanks for tuning in. I'll be back on Monday, and my time on Monday is at 2:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and then on Thursday mornings at 10:15 a.m. So let me know what you'd like to learn. I'm here to help. And again, if you want to reach out to me for more personal assistance, just send me a private message and I'll see if I can help you improve your drumming, because I'm sure I can. Okay, everybody have a great day. Keep practicing and hang in there with all your problems, because I'm here to help. Take care. Bye-bye.